Welcome to Tales from the Bridge, episode 26. Thank you for joining us. We are talking about Ancestral Night by Elizabeth Bear in this episode. We've got a little bit of cool science news at the beginning, and we end off with some Matrix trivia, so we hope you enjoy this one. Let's make our way over to the bridge.
Chinese lunar rover Yuta-2 is seeing up in the moon. They've seen this cube, and they're going to investigate. Yeah, have you heard about this? They
have.
There's an image of it that you can see. It's a grainy, pixelated image of a cube sitting on the surface of the moon, and it's on the. I believe it's on the dark side of the moon. I could be wrong about that, but anyway, it's someplace that, and they don't know what it is. Some people are speculating that it's a secret Russian moon base. Some people are saying it's a Starbucks for aliens. But the little lunar rover is slowly trudging its way over to get a better look at it.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Well, it would not surprise me in the least if there has been cool stuff going on the moon that we are not privy to. So I hope they find something cool. Maybe a Starbucks. Sure.
How big is it? I'm trying to read about it, but is this a large, like if it's showing up in a photo, it's got to be pretty big.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at this photo, and based on the distance that it is, the thing looks like it's probably 10 to 15 feet cubed. That's what it looks like to me, but it's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's described as a shed in a lot of the news coverage, and not to get conspiratorial here or anything, but I find it interesting because I can't help but think of like the Beijing Olympics, where the Chinese had like the fake fireworks display in their opening thing. Like everyone's like, "Oh my God, these are amazing!" And someone's like, "Oh, those are 3D fireworks." Like they've just sort of, it's all kind of half fake. And now I'm wondering, like, so they land a rover on the moon, and suddenly there might be, I don't know, like, so I know that it's created, that the Olympics created a sort of informational bias for me when it comes to sort of Chinese news reports and what we know about Chinese sort of censorship within their own news base anyways. So I don't know. We'll see. I hope it's something cool and interesting, like Marty says. I hope it's something like kind of awesome, because it's totally plausible, or it could just be a weird pixelation through the camera, and they get up there and it's just going to be a squarish rock, and I feel like that's probably the most likely thing.
Well, do you want to hear what the experts say?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So there's this gentleman named Paul Byrne from Washington University who seems to be an authority on moon stuff, and he says that cube thing, it's a boulder. It's possibly of interest to those of us who like rocks, but that's all it is.
Mm. Well, I think it's probably just the remains of, the set from 2001. The giant obelisk that Kubrick put up there back in the 60s. It's probably just been worn down a little bit, and now it's smaller. That's my bet.
No, it's a rock. There are no UFOs, and that was a meteor you saw.
Thank you, Tristan.
Thanks for clearing that up.
Let's burst every bubble at once. I know we all want to imagine fun things, but come on, guys.
Well,
I do secretly want it to be something too. I mean, wouldn't that be great?
Well, since everything is already known, there is no point speculating. Obviously, it must be something we already know about, since we know everything always that has ever happened and will ever happen.
Well, the thing about the surface of the moon is it's a pretty boring place. There's not a lot of heterogeneity up there.
It does seem that way.
Mm-hmm. You guys see about this company called Spin Launch?
Yeah,
that's trying to find an alternative way to get payload up into orbit.
That was super cool. Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, you often hear about people trying to send something up into space using ballistics. Just, let's shoot a cannon and try to get it up really high so that it gets into orbit. But it's
like
it's
a
really
railgun,
hard.
Right?
Yeah, or a railgun. That's right. A lot of people talk about building a railgun on the side of a mountain and have these magnets accelerate some payload up to some supersonic speed, but that's hard and very expensive. So this company just said, well, let's just build a centrifuge, and like one of those vomit comets that the astronauts have to go in to train themselves for high G. But let's put it on its side so that it spins things, and then it shoots it up into the air. And so before it even leaves the centrifuge, whatever the payload is that's spinning is at supersonic speeds. So it goes up into the atmosphere. No, it goes up. Yeah, it goes up into the atmosphere. And then at some point, when it's at the top of its arc, it ignites chemical rockets and then continues its way up into space. And they haven't gotten that far, but they have been able to accelerate with their centrifuge a payload up to supersonic speeds, which is neat, I think.
Yeah, I saw that launch and I thought it was a super cool idea. I never imagined it before. It was like, oh, wow, that's new. Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes way more sense than some giant, long railgun type thing. You just spin it up and then zoink. But of course, I wonder, where did that rocket come down? And I guess they must calculate these things fairly well. But if it didn't ignite and take off into space, the thing was like a good, I don't know, it was a couple meters long, I think, right? It was like a miniature little rocket that they sent. But I hope it didn't come down on Donnie Darko's house or something out of the sky. Maybe that's what you saw, Sam. It took it a little while, but it managed to come all the way
down.
There
we go, full circle.
Circle.
It was spin launches payload.
It's behind Mossville Farm, just west of Guelph. We're looking for it.
That's right. Come and get it.
Made it pretty far.
Yeah, where to take off?
New Mexico.
So this month we read Ancestral Night by Elizabeth Bear, and we got to actually speak with her. I was a big fan of this book. I was a big fan of her when I met her, and this is definitely a space opera, as I think fits the definition. We've got faster than light travel, we've got tons of characters, and Elizabeth goes into a really good definition of what a space opera is, and her sort of categorization of that sort of subgenre. And I'm going to let her do the talking on that when you do get to hear that interview. She does a really good job of parsing out what that means. For this book, we had, I thought, really, it's a full meal. You get a lot of interesting ideas. You get really interesting science. I think strong characters, well written, fleshed out characters. I think there's politics as well, and there's a lot of psychology. And so she just covers so much ground. And I was immediately hooked, and it was an easy book to get into. And there's still some adventure. There's a chase. There's a hostage taking. There's all sorts. There's hints at a really ancient civilization. So there's great depth to this book. But there's so much that there are times where I felt like we were taking in an aside that didn't necessarily drive the story. So you have to have, in reading, you kind of have to be ready to take a bit of a digression, a bit of a break from the flow of the story. And it's not always to the detriment, but it kind of depends where your headspace is. Like, so there are times where you sort of take a departure with the characters, and you sit with the characters as they debate a political subject or a political device or a form of government or what have you. And if you're really anxious to see what's going to happen next in the story, you're going to there were a couple times where I caught myself skimming over this and then jumping because I just was anxious to find out what the next step was. I kind of had to remind myself to slow down and take a step back and reread, and I was never disappointed when I did. But it can make for a story flow that feels a little bit interrupted at times, and sometimes the stories benefit, and sometimes I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I recommend the book. I think it was great, and I enjoyed it. I don't know, what did all of you think? I was. This is right in my alley. This really checks a lot of boxes for me. So, I don't know. What did you guys think?
I agree with that sentiment that those diversions can be a little bit distracting, and I the ones that really distracted me were when you get really deep into somebody's headspace, in particular, Hamy's, the protagonist. A lot of Elizabeth Bear's writing is exploring the ideas around mental health and right minding. The whole idea of right minding is this technological concept where we can change people's neurochemistry and make it so that people are thinking in a different way, maybe a more typical way. And so if you have issues with anxiety or depression, that's just a quick neural tweak away where you're able to adjust it on a situational basis. But to kind of get there and to really explore this idea of right minding, Elizabeth goes in and goes really deep into the characters' anxieties and past traumas. And I think you have to read the book with a sense of empathy for the characters. Otherwise, you just kind of say, this is a bit much. I really liked it. I found Ancestral Nights to strike a balance that, as you said, it worked, but I could see how it could be a little bit much. In fact, in reading the second book, Machine, which I have started reading, I kind of think she's gone a little bit too far down that road of getting into the headspace of the protagonists and the other main characters. But yeah, anyway, I actually really thought that the concepts that she explores, in particular, right minding and having AIs doing neural tweaks to you in real time, not out of a sense of control, but out of a sense of camaraderie. Hamy, the protagonist, has this amazing relationship with Singer, the ship mind. That's what Elizabeth Bear calls them, just like Ian M. Banks, and she loves the AI, and the AI really has a very good fondness for her as well. And so there's this trust that she relinquishes her most intimate neural chemistries to an AI and trusts it to tweak it for her in real time all the time. And I thought that was actually really kind of very neat. It was a neat concept. And those of us who, kind of consider our own neurochemistry to be flawed, as many of us probably do, would love, some of us might love to have that thing being tweaked and optimized. So I loved that. And she does explore that in many other books as well.
I would definitely like that, actually. If I could have just some AI sitting in the back of my head going, you know what, relax, Sam. You don't need to worry about that right now.
Me too.
Or make me fearless in a time, like when the pilot needs to actually focus, he actually, adjusts his level so he's somewhat fearless and psychotic in a way, and so he's not worried about anything when he's actually accomplishing like complicated maneuvers. And it's like, yeah, that would be fantastic. I would love that. It'd be like a little superpower. What do you say, Tristan?
No. We go to Marty next because he's going to say something bad about this book. We can't leave it at that.
I'm not going to say anything.
I can go next. I'm kidding.
Yeah, go for it.
Sorry, I'm such a little shit disturber. I'm sorry, guys. So I love this book. I think it is. Well, I know it's one of my favorite that we've read for the podcast. It might be my favorite. You used a word, Kevin, that has come up when we talked with Adrian Tchaikovsky, and I'm sure it would have come up with. It came up with Elizabeth, and it came up with Daniel H. Wilson as well, and that's the word empathy. And I'm finding that a lot of my favorite authors are really conscious of empathy or very much aware of the concept, and it's an important theme in these books, and that's a favorite theme of mine, because we're in an age in the real world now where everyone needs more empathy. And if sci-fi is going to, and I believe science fiction actually does help us go through, does help the real world kind of condense ideas of the future to help us get to that better future. So what better idea than having empathy, or what better theme than empathy? I love how she took from Banks a little bit. I don't know if that's safe to say she took from Banks, but I think she would
I think
readily
she did. Absolutely.
she would readily admit that as well. She loves Banks, and he's becoming one of my favorite. The more I read of his stuff, I love the ship Mines, and she even names. I can't think of. Excuse me. I can't think of the names of the ships from the.
I'll explain it to you slowly.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah.
All right.
That's like the best name for a ship.
Please explain. But that reminds me of Banks. That's like he had names like that. And again, I can't just come up and think of one off the top of my head from what he used. I'm sure Kevin can come up with some good ones. But they're great names. And they're not there's I've never heard anything named like these things, and it's a definite throwback to Banks, and I think that's awesome. And I really love the struggle with identity. That's something that Hamey goes through in this story. Now, I will say the story was smaller than I thought it would be, but it still felt big. But it's not. You're not traveling to different systems. You're not traveling to different planets and meeting different species. You're getting a little bit of that, but you're really just like in space. At a salvage, then you're at a ship or a station, and then you're back out in space, and then there's conflict that feels quite remote, even though you're in deep space. I just love that struggle between those two characters. I love how the identity is unfolding for the main character. She's not who she thinks or thought she was, and I think that's a great. What happened when I was reading this is I looked at stories that I liked and main characters that I like, and I really think I love stories with identity. Like, for example, Blade Runner. I love how and this happens a lot with Philip K. Dick, but I'm just relating to the film, just the unfolding of identity. You're not who you think you are, or uncovering who, and sometimes these characters never do find out who they are. And just because excited about the Matrix, that's another one that even with this new one, we don't know what's going on with this Matrix resurrections. Who are they? But that's what Neo struggled with in the first one, was discovering who he was. We all love that story where your main character discovers who they are. And I like the twist that Elizabeth Bear did with this. It was not discovering that you're going to be the one. You're not going to be the savior. You're discovering that you've had a lot of trauma. And now, like, let's face that trauma. I think that trauma as a theme and people finding their identity with trauma is a great help for many people reading. It's relatable. She's a very relatable author. She's so empathetic, and she knows her audience. And I think also her audience and a lot of science fiction readers are adapting to this new stuff where empathy is a strong theme, and bad characters being pretty bad, but also it's a very gray area, because the pirates in this story, they were bad, but they were also traumatized, and raised in a different way, and so. But overall, I'm excited to read the next one. Even if the story is small and doesn't really go anywhere, if the themes are as strong as they were in this one, I'll very much appreciate it. Lovable characters. It reminded me of Becky Chambers at time and Shards of Earth. Those two books, which we've read those two in the last 6 months. Something about those two books ring something similar in this Ancestral Night, but I love this book, one of my favorites that we've read, and I look forward to reading more Elizabeth Bear.
Ever wondered what it takes to make it in the movie business? Peel back the curtain with 4-6 Success Filmmaking. 4-6 Success Filmmaking is where filmmakers share their stories and the secrets.
It's beyond competitive out there.
There have been movies that it's taken me 10 years to get made.
Don't wait to create. Like, you've got to just keep making stuff.
Tune into 4-6 Success Filmmaking for your dose of cinematic realness, direct from the voices that have lived it.
well, I'll pick up on that point. For me, reading this book was an extremely similar experience to exactly those two books. It just felt very much like Becky Chambers' Long Way to a Small Angry Planet and Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shards of Earth. And I loved Becky Chambers' book. I liked Shards of Earth, and I would say I liked Ancestral Night as well, in the same sort of vein. And I appreciate everything you appreciate about it, Tristan. I think I enjoyed the meditation on identity, right? This wasn't and as an exploration of that core idea of right minding, right? This idea that you could tweak your neurochemistry. And not only that, you can tweak your memories, right? Or the government can tweak your memories, or the justice system, your rehabilitation, can be. And I've read some other work by Elizabeth Bear that in her short story, she goes into this notion of right minding. And it's a very interesting notion that you can take to different extremes, right? And so she explores in this book one extreme of that, where like you could actually, so the protagonist turns out, I don't know how much I want to say about this, but she was, raised in a certain environment, in kind of a cult like environment, and then she left that, and then upon reflection, she realized, oh well, that wasn't really me. I was sort of given my by this cult that raised me. And so then she tries to figure out who she really is. But then it turns out, by right minding through, the criminal justice system, she was involved in a crime. And it turns out, she wasn't fully aware of her role. And so, who is she, right? Like her memories were kind of replaced and played with enough that it made her another person. But the moral of the story is that you choose, right? You choose who you get to be at some point, right? And that's sort of where the character ends. She's like, yeah, but I might have been this person because of these memories. I might have been this person because of my raising, the way I was raised. But ultimately, this is the person I want to be. I choose, and so that's great, And I think that's a noble and interesting exploration. My only conundrum with it, or I was a little it was too small a story. I guess we've said that as well a little bit, right? Like to me, it didn't feel like a space opera. It felt like a story about one character. And I guess and I just got a little bit tired of like the story about this one character sometimes for a book this size, or maybe just my expectations of where this book was going. It didn't have political intrigue. It didn't have the double cross, the multiple parties, multiple storylines that I would love out of a space opera. So for me, it was just a little bit slow and a little bit small. But that was true of Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, except that was a smaller book. Than this. It was probably about half the thickness of this book. And so I felt like, Becky Chambers kind of told, this genre should be called Family in Space or something like that, right? It's the chosen family, or you and a few good mates. And it's like, you're in this together on a ship and you're going on a journey. And that's what Shards of Earth was. And that's what this is. That's what Long Way to a Small Angry Planet was. But I could only sort of do that for so long. And I think that's like a 300-page book for me, not a 600 or 700-page book. 500-page book like this one was. So, it wasn't my favorite, but I'm glad we read it. And I'd read more Elizabeth Bear. But kind of like Kevin, I liked the Jacob's Ladder trilogy probably a little more. And I liked her short stories a lot more, actually. Some of them, anyway. Like her short stories were, maybe I can only take Elizabeth Bear in sort of smaller doses than in this book.
You present a good point that there wasn't a lot of politics, but there was a lot of political philosophizing, right? So they while there wasn't interpersonal politics or even overt groups trying to battle against each other, she talked a lot about, like, the Synarch itself is, as far as I can tell, a Marxist dream, right? I think it is egalitarian,
or like the culture.
What's that?
Like the culture.
Like the culture. That's right. In E&M Banks, that's right. It is a bit like that, exactly. Although they are not. There is resource scarcity, so this is a different kind of culture where the resource scarcity exists, and yet they're distributing it around. It's like communism, and the pirates are really capitalists, and so they're. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is one way to look at it. And so you get this tension, and she even talked about that in the interview, where she said that the Synarch for some is a utopia and it's a dystopia for others. So there is this political tension that a reader could kind of look at and sink their teeth into if they were interested.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting thing she said during the interview was about like different narrative styles, and this was what was it? Invoking, implying, induction or something. I think she said, right? Narrative by induction. So her technique here isn't to sort of tell you all about the Synarch, right? She like just drops hints throughout the story about like how things work, and you're sort of left to piece together what kind of system this is without the sort of, it's not like Dune. It's not like Herbert sort of telling you the narrative description of like, here's what the society is like, and here's what's going on in this guy's head, and here's, she's pretty subtle about like piecing together about the world building, I guess, right? And for me, I mean, that's nice. It gives your imagination. But when we get to interesting, deep philosophical kinds of things to think about, like right-minding and the psychology and forms of government and political philosophy, I mean, that's when I kind of want to get my teeth into that. Like, I'm like, okay, well, great. Tell me more. Like, that's what I'm interested in. And I feel like I didn't get a lot of that, right? It was very sort of loosely described, which is, and then, the story could just focus on the plot and the character. But for my taste, when we're getting into the philosophical issues, like, I want you to tell me more, a lot more. I want to like dig my teeth into it, and I want you to have fleshed it out more than just leaving it to me to imagine, like, from a few pieces how this is all going to work together.
You know what I think we might have? We might have a situation where Marty's saying there's too much about characters in this book, and I don't think that's happened before. Usually it's the other way around, where I'm saying it's all about the ideas. We don't need so much about the characters.
Maybe, yeah.
No. Good to get that flip. It all depends on how it's presented, though, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your mood, where you're at, and a certain time too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. I did like the Easter eggs too. Well, there's I think a couple. I mean, there's the Kirk Douglas planet, the hint at like essentially a Kirk Douglas clone planet that Conla is from.
Oh, the pilot
Spartacus, because he's from Spartacus, and they talk about him being super good looking, and that I was like, I asked her in the interview. I said,
yeah.
So, I said, is Conla a Kirk Douglas clone? And she laughed. She says, well, yeah. So, and
but didn't she also say that Conla was like a non-male toxic male Han Solo or something like that?
Oh, yeah. And there's and there is a kind of like Lord of the Rings ending when the Eagles show up type thing, right? And like naming the ships, like I like that there's these sort of influences that point to other canons and other ideas before it, and she had no trouble just like when I asked her about the Spartacus planet, she was like, oh yeah, and that's what, so I there's a lighter side to it that I enjoyed from this as well, and I don't mind if the bigger galaxy and the bigger world building is just hinted at. It doesn't necessarily need to be completely explicit, but I do hope in future books that it gets explored. That's sort of always the hope.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes when you read these space operas or any sort of big, expansive story or world, that something gets hinted at that's really compelling, and you're like, oh, I hope we come back to that, and then you don't, and you're like 4 books later, like, oh, remember that thing in the first book that I thought was really awesome, and that's what I've been waiting for, and so there's a bit of that. But Kevin, you're farther than any of us, I think.
Reading Machine, I would say I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and yes, it definitely explores the Synarch more. However, I think both of these stories are very micro, and what you're talking about, and I think what Mario's talking about, is more macro. And there's not a ton of macro philosophizing about what the world is like. The world building is very good at a micro level, but you're right, it's not a ton of description of the macro. But again, this is a series; it's going to get longer. There's going to be more. There's going to be more books.
I think it's interesting, though, the parallels with Becky Chambers, right? Like the Becky Chambers series is also exactly like this. It sort of feels the same. It's very family in space. It's very focused on empathy. And it's also sort of set of different stories with different characters that happen to be in the same universe, rather than like one continuous series with the same characters. So it might just, I think this is a new genre, a new subgenre or something of space opera, or maybe, I mean, it is soap opera. I guess now that I think of family in space is actually soap opera, right? Which is what space opera is, but we're used to a certain flavor to that, I think, from male authors, and it is interesting that it's being redefined by female authors, I think, largely this sort of new way of doing space opera that is more character based and more empathy based, and I'd read more.
Yeah, the big thing for me is when I look for books that in this genre in particular that take social ideas or in social advancement that we're dealing with now and demonstrate its viability. Whether we're talking about, we've talked about this before, like gender pronouns and political ideas, and that's sort of, for me, one of the big strengths of this book, where someone, if they want to, they can turn off their sexuality and say, what, like, where she's like, I'm done with partners, and I'm gonna actually take a break, and I can actually right mind myself to do that. And we have people who are born that way and live that way, and here they're represented. And I think that the strengths of these types of books is that more people get represented, and more people, different types of people, get to participate, and in a whole, I think, new or higher level of diversity that sci-fi is uniquely suited to demonstrate and create a platform for. And I think that's out of my big takeaway from this book was Elizabeth's real strength at doing that. This is, I think, one of those works that really does fit within this genre, and where we can demonstrate the viability of social change and accepting new people and different types of people into the world that we live in now through these books. So it's I recommend, and it's, I think, within a subgenre within this sort of space opera genre, like you said, is being led by women authors. And anyways, I'm glad we were able to feature it on the show.
What's next, Kevin?
Kevin, you're up.
Well, our next book that we're going to be reading is now for something completely different. We've gone from space opera to not space opera. That would be the best way to put it. So I'm going to move to a Kim Stanley Robertson book, and he's written various series, but this is a standalone book that I've read, and I really liked it. And it's called 2312. So I don't know if you guys have heard about it or read it.
Yeah, I got that for Christmas last year and have not read it yet.
I bought it for myself last year as well, and it's been staring at me on the shelf. So I'm glad to hear this.
Okay.
Yeah, this is great. Yeah,
man. Well, then that's opportune. When I read this one, I loved it, and I'm looking forward to rereading it again. No faster than light travel, all within Sol, like our solar system. Kind of general, like let's use near-term space technology, and how could we colonize planets within our solar system. It's a bit of a mystery. There's some political intrigue. The characters are, I think, pretty well developed, and it's not a short book, but I think we can get through it, and it's a page turner. It's for sure a page turner. Lots of action.
Oh, great.
Right on.
Well, I found it on a list of optimistic sci-fi. So I was looking for like non-dystopian type, hopeful message about the future kind of books. And I went through various lists, and this one was on a lot of them. And so that's what I'm looking forward to. Would you agree that is that a good characterization?
Yeah, I would characterize it as that. Humans have managed to go out and colonize our solar system, and done so effectively, and we haven't destroyed ourselves yet. So,
cool.
Yeah.
Well, David Brin gives us a good solid 40% chance of surviving, which is like amazingly optimistic.
And that's right. And he's an optimist, right? He characterizes himself as an optimist.
Yeah. Awesome. And we will likely be talking to Mr. Robinson
Yep.
in a few months.
Perfect. Sounds great.
Are you ready? Are you down for some
Yeah.
trivia?
Let's do
Okay.
it. Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Question number 1. What film has the best steak eating scene ever shot?
The Matrix.
And that's our theme for tonight, folks.
Boom!
Ah,
We're going to the Matrix.
Nice work. Nice work.
All right. What is the training program that everyone misses the first time?
The rooftop jumping.
Jump. Yeah.
Jump. Okay, that's Tristan for the win there, I think. And I got the quote here, and I won't try to do the Neo impression or not the Neo, the
Morpheus.
yes, Morpheus impression. I'm trying to free your mind, Neo, but I can only show you the door. You're the one that has to walk through it. Tank, load the jump program. You have to let it all go, Neo. Fear, doubt, and disbelief. Free your mind. Okay.
Nice.
Now, Morpheus' ship is named for Nebuchadnezzar, a king of which
Oh, no.
ancient
Babylon.
empire? Babylon. Who got Babylon? Marty?
Yeah,
All right.
Hey, man.
Wow.
I'm showing my
Okay.
chops today. I know my Matrix. Look out.
All right.
Oh, Tristan's gone. Like, oh, fine. Well, Marty's going to take him.
Did Tristan take his toys and go home? He's like, I'm leaving the sandbox. I'm
I
out.
thought that his ship name was named for Peter Pan. Isn't that the name of the ship in Peter Pan? Nebuchadnezzar?
Is it?
I don't know that it was. What is the ship in Peter Pan? I don't remember.
I don't know.
Oh.
Tristan might know.
The
What's
Jolly
ship-
Roger.
Oh, dang.
Oh, that
What's
makes
the
more sense.
Nebuchadnezzar? What's that?
Nebuchadnezzar, that's biblical, I believe.
Yeah. He's a
But that's
king
not
of
what it is
Babylon.
That's not what it is in the Matrix.
And Peter Pan.
Peter Pan is the Jolly Roger. What's the I didn't get the question because I dropped out there.
Oh, so the question was Morpheus' ship is named Nebuchadnezzar, a king of which ancient empire?
Babylon?
Yes. And
I got it just as
Marty
yours.
won that because of your internet connection, but he was pretty quick on it. I got to say, like, I think Marty got that pretty
Hey, man.
fairly.
There was a time in my life when I read Wikipedia articles about all the little Easter eggs and hidden meanings in the Matrix. So it's all coming back to me.
Oh,
But also, why were you guys talking about Peter Pan when I got back?
Oh, I was thinking that for some reason the ship name in Peter Pan was also called that, but apparently
Oh.
I was way off.
Okay.
all right. Now, why are the aliens using humans as batteries to power their society?
Did you say aliens?
Why are the aliens using humans as batteries to power their society?
You mean machines? These aren't aliens.
Not aliens, but
Or
machines.
the machines,
The
Well, yeah.
baddies.
the baddies, the mean people
Okay.
in the Matrix.
I thought I missed the biggest part that in the Matrix. Wait a minute, alien?
And
Oh
there
my
were
god! You
aliens.
just
I'm
blew
not
my mind.
half the Matrix fans that any of you guys are, so I'm just I'm along for the ride. But we got a new Matrix coming out, so I felt like it was on theme.
Oh yeah, that's
This
definitely
was
a good.
the
way to go.
weakest scientific point of the Matrix, but it
I
was
think
like
so
that
too.
the
Yeah,
humans are
totally.
bioelectricity, right? That we generate electricity, that we're each human's worth of batteries worth. But I'm not sure what more.
But there was a reason
say
they
about
switched to the humans. That they
It's because they
Oh,
scorched the skies and they didn't have the solar power.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. During the initial stages of their existence as sentient entities, the machines were reliant on solar energy. However, according to Morpheus, human beings scorched the sky in order to cut off the source. Once the wars between the two rival life forms began, it was this action that forced the machines to resort to enslaving human beings and making them into their batteries, along with another form of fusion. And
Shouldn't they just use fusion rather
Yeah.
than human?
You would think.
To
Yeah.
me, that would be a better solution. Or if they can build this virtual world, the Matrix, maybe they could do stuff like core down into the mantle of the Earth, and I don't know.
You think there'd be other options?
There
available
are
to
better
the-
energy solutions than
Yeah.
than humans.
And I should say, I got two more questions here for you. I should say, full credit to funtrivia.com. That's where I've lifted these questions for tonight.
Nice.
Okay, and I got it. This might be a spoiler for the one person who hasn't watched the Matrix. Name the crew member who dies first.
Tank?
No.
No, it's the woman. No,
Yeah.
not like this. Not like this. Not this.
Yeah, yeah.
What's her name?
Okay, hold on. That's good.
You'll get it. Tristan will get it.
No, Marty might get it first.
No, I don't remember her name. If I'm even right about that. Yeah.
I think she is the first crew member. No. The other guy goes first because she sees him go, and then
gets
she says,
shot.
"Not like this."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know his name though.
Boozer.
No, you're thinking Tank and no, not in the real world. It's in the Matrix. He's got a ponytail. He's in the front seat. He's driving, I believe, when they take the thing out of his belly button.
Yeah.
They suck that bug out of his belly button.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of his name. It's a bit.
It's
like
Mouse.
Mouse.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mouse.
Mouse is the first to go. Right, he
Really?
goes down with the machine guns against the brick wall.
Oh, right. Yeah.
When they right after the glitch shows up, the deja vu.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mouse.
Good one.
Now, finally,
How do you know what chicken tastes like?
That's a good point. So, now, what color is the grass in the Matrix?
Green?
Yes, it's green. Good job.
Yeah, it's
there you go.
it better be.
Everything's green in the Matrix. That was a trick question.
That was a trick question, but it was on funtrivia.com, and I was like, that'll be a good ender. All right.
Nice.
Where is there even grass? Where is there grass? I can't think of a single scene where there's grass. At the end of the movie, there's grass when they're at the end of the third movie.
Yeah, I
I
remember
think
that.
it was. I think the trivia writer just wanted to mess with the people.
Okay, so that was a lot of fun. Next book we are reading, 2312 by Kim Stanley Robinson. Read along. It's a chunky book, but it's really good hard sci-fi and a pretty good adventure as well. So next episode we chat with Shauna McGuire, who's probably the most fun person we've had on the show. She is just hilarious. A lot of fun. So, okay, thanks for joining us. Until next time.